Hey, let's start the show.
For Thursday, July 15th, 2020. We're back. Welcome to This Is Only a Test, the official podcast of Tested. Wow, that was neat.
I kind of love it. It didn't follow the 15-second rule.
It didn't, and instantly disqualified. I'm sorry that I didn't listen to it ahead of time. That was a new intro theme created by Tyler. Thank you so much, Tyler. I look at the SoundCloud, and actually, it looks like he created it 5 years ago. And
Wow.
You might have even shared it with us 5 years ago.
Still feels like it's from the future.
That's so true. And if you have forgotten, we're taking new pitches for new intro themes, trying to keep it under 30 seconds. So 30 seconds, 15 seconds? 15 seconds? That's such a constraint. And while that chip theme was lovely, unfortunately, it broke the rules. Played it anyway. We got through it. But thank you, Tyler. But we will not be using that as our permanent theme. I have a few more queued up from other people who sent it in. If you have a theme you want to pitch us, email me, Norman@Tested. Send me a SoundCloud link. Keep it under 15 seconds, and I will play it in the future. Hey, everybody. Welcome to the podcast. Hey, Jeremy Williams and Kishore Hari.
Hi, Norman Chan.
It's been a while.
It's been a couple weeks. Sorry we weren't able to be on the past couple weeks, but it was actually kind of nice having a brief respite. It was almost like a mini vacation being away from the podcast.
It was time for July 4th. Got to spend time with the family, make use of our new backyard that we just renovated. And I was thinking about this yesterday because we recorded, of course, Still Untitled with Adam and made an announcement that we're going on a summer break for Still Untitled. We're trying to refresh, reset. And when I said the words out loud that we'd been recording for 8 years for Still Untitled, and for This Is Only a Test, we've been doing this for over 10 years, almost every single week, right? Rarely have we had to skip a week or take a break or not. And I think for me, I've been on the vast majority of the episodes. It's like in Lost when Desmond had to push the button every however many minutes it was. It just feels like I got a chance to stop pushing the button and the world didn't end, and it was okay. It was okay.
Thanks for all the comments from listeners asking if we're doing fine. We're back. We're running through the summer. It might have been, this show might be on for 10 years, but it only feels like 8 to me. So I feel like we're on a good trajectory.
Whoa. Kishore, you haven't been a regular on this show for 8 years. I think you were 5 years?
I've only been on for like 3 or 4 years, and it feels like 8. I guess that's the wrong way.
I think that's exactly it. But we're also we talked about it this past week, and we're also gonna not exactly reformat this show, but we're gonna keep things a little tighter. There's so much to cover, especially this week with having been off for 2 episodes. But we're gonna get right to it with our top story. Here we go.
Top story this week.
It's been quite a week, and we absolutely want to acknowledge the news out there that Grant Imahara of Mythbusters had suddenly passed this week. We talked about it on Still Untitled, and I think we're still kind of reeling from it and processing from it. I I don't know if I have anything more to say on this podcast because I think guys should listen to Still Entitled. Adam told some really great stories. He knew Grant better than all of us here. But if you guys had any thoughts on the impact of Grant in your lives as part of MythBusters.
I don't have much more to add. I think the Still Entitled is an incredible kind of deep dive on who Grant was, and the few interactions I had with him were very much in line with how Adam described him. He was so kind, ingenious, joyous, humble. It just really a delight to be to have in this world. Like, I think the last time he and I talked, we talked about like the design for a very ridiculous, giant, oversized robot for a project, which I'm glad did not come to fruition. But he humored the discussion and actually really got into it. Grant was the best. He'll be extraordinarily missed, and it hasn't set in how much of a loss it is far too soon.
I never met Grant, unfortunately, but I imagine if he could have gotten past his boredom with me, I would have been infatuated with him because we had so much overlap. We had so many things that we all shared in common in terms of our interests, and certainly, just like Adam, he was looked upon as a real figure in the maker community. And I think the saddest thing is that he just died too young. He's only 3 years older than I am, and he just died very suddenly, and that's very, very sad. That's makes it just so much harder to swallow.
Yeah,
I have one recommendation. If you haven't, there's a fan film called Star Trek Continues where he plays Sulu. And I think you get to see a lot of Grant's joy for inhabiting a character, which is not the Grant that we always got to see on MythBusters or in building projects. And so I really think that's a great watch. You can just search it on YouTube.
and the just kind of the overwhelming sharing of love and stories from people who may have met him just the once to dear friends of his. That's just been, I mean, it's been so powerful to read. And I think you're right, Jeremy. Like there are people on these shows, like MythBusters, that you could relate to, and he was absolutely one. I feel like people who are engineers and roboticists could 100% feel like they were represented, on television.
May we all have the impact on the world that he did, or even a tenth of the impact he did. The tributes are incredible.
Yeah. But I do want to talk about, this is an unconventional top story in terms of a news announcement, but I do want to talk about some Lego this week. Lego has been quite busy in the past 2 weeks with some announcements that I think are going to cause my wallet certainly some pain. 2 weeks ago, they announced a new line of products called the Lego Art Series. Now, these are definitely aimed as part of like their black box series of Lego products, which are aimed for adults. It's kind of like their Ultimate Collector series for Star Wars. Their kind of art figures. They have this Mickey Mouse and Minnie Mouse, sculpture that they're selling now. And these Lego Art Series are 13-inch by, is that 13 by 13 or 12 by 12-inch mosaics that are representative of licensed pieces of art from the Marvel universe, the Star Wars universe, and also in pop culture in general with Warhol and also the Beatles. So what you get is essentially this plate that's 16 studs by 16 studs square.
No, it's not. It's more than that. I counted them.
How many is that?
You can't draw that on a game frame. No. These are like 24 studs at least. I'd have to recount them, but
no, yeah, you're absolutely right. Why did I say? I'm completely. Oh, they're 9 16 by 16 plates is how they're assembled. So it's not one big plate. It's 3 by 3. So what's 3 times 16? Quickly, 54, 58. 48.
Oh,
48.
48.
Dear. 48.
48 by 48. That's what
Yep.
they are.
Yep.
Which ends up being about 3,000 individual little pips
Mhm.
that you follow a guide to for each of these, 16 by 16. I guess you build them in 16 by 16 is how you can divvy it up. And then they composite together to make this very beautiful portrait of Iron Man, Darth Vader, or John Paul or Ringo.
Marilyn Monroe. I
Or
think they're
Marilyn
going to
Monroe.
sell a bajillion of these things because they're going to appeal to a whole new audience. It's like, obviously, I think that the other Lego news we're going to talk about is for Lego people, but this is for anybody because it's not even three-dimensional. It's not even complicated. It is actual art. And you're going to build this thing and you're going to put it on your wall and you're going to justify it because it's art.
So what's also
I-
interesting, sorry, go ahead, sure.
I was going to say, I think the interesting play here is the fact that they're licensing art from creators. I think the Marilyn Monroe piece is the actual interesting one because that's an Andy Warhol created piece of art. So can they do like a Roy Lichtenstein, a Hooper, like, you can go on down the line of great artists they could license kind of pop culture-y art from and create, and then it fits like Jeremy's total kind of aesthetic. I'm not sure it's a new set of people. I think for a long time, Lego has been catering to adults more so than kids. So I think this is just a natural continuation of going to the next level with that, of making not just the actual building, but the display of the pieces becomes the point.
And people have been doing mosaics with Lego forever, right? You see them at Lego conventions, and you can even buy them on, Bricklink and Etsy. And there are programs you can actually download. I think Lego even had, in their store, an automated, almost like a photo booth that you could have walked into, had your portrait taken. They would take a low res raster of your image and then give you a design for a mosaic as a kit. This is just licensed imagery, so it's well designed. I think you're right. The Marilyn Monroe one is interesting because it's a direct Lego adaptation of famous piece of Warhol art with that iconic color palette. It's also the only one where the pips are studless; they're flat, and so it almost has like a flip dot design, like those old flip dot signs you see at train stations, right? That spacing, the negative space between the pips, right, at that density, kind of reminds me of flip dot design. They're $120 each, which I know if you do the traditional Lego math, it's much cheaper. It's 3 cents per stud, essentially. It's not going to be the 10 cents average that you want to price yourself at. But these are tiny, tiny studs, which are, if you buy them just on the used market, you could get them at less than a penny each. You can get bags of these for the dollar.
Oh, that's an interesting point because the actual weight is going to be a lot less.
And also just how common these pieces are. They're not novel pieces. It really is. They're not exactly like people. The rarity, the uniqueness of the pieces in the secondary market is, where these pieces come from, how they're derived from other sets. This is just the confetti of Lego. It's the glitter of Lego that gets pieced together. Now, that's not to say it's not worth it because there's design. There's a new brick separator. There's the kind of compositing of the plates, and they transform. So the idea is that you buy one set. You buy the Beatles one, and you have the option of going for any of the Beatles. You get 4 options per that one set. But if you want all 4 Beatles, you want John, Paul, George, and Ringo, that's $500.
A bajillion
$120 each.
That's why they're going to sell so many of these things.
Who's going to put just Paul on their wall when you got to have the quartet?
That's
the
right.
Fab Four.
Yeah.
This is an excuse to get Ringo out of there, though.
The other thing is with like the Iron Man and the Vader one. But this is a whole separate discussion. Let's not get into the Beatles discussion. The other thing is that they do transform. So if you buy the Iron Man one, for example, you get the option of 3 different poses for Iron Man, 3 different portraits, different marks of armor. You get the Hulkbuster armor as an option, or I think the mark is at the 85 armor from Endgame is one of the options. But if you buy 3 of them, then you unlock special instructions online that let you connect the tiles. So it's not 3 by 3, it's 3 by 9. And you have a landscape wide Iron Man with his repulsor arm out and you have this, essentially $400 piece of artwork made of Lego that you can put up on your walls.
It's freaking marketing brilliance. There
Yeah.
is nothing that is stupid about this at all. That I'm in awe of Lego.
I disagree. This is the thing that's a brick too far is the custom soundtrack that they advertise with it. Is like as you're building, you can wear headphones and listen to some curated music as you build. And I was like, well, that's too far.
I don't think it's just music. I think there are interviews. I think that they're actual like podcast material.
Oh, that could be cool then, actually.
Will it
about
take the average
It's-
length to build this set based on their play testing?
Yeah.
Like you get a 5-hour soundtrack or playlist because it's an average of 5 hours to assemble this.
Maybe there's a when you hear the tone, turn the page, and so you can actually stay in sync with the build
Nice.
process.
Nice. You'll notice in this next instruction, this next bag has a large number of blue pieces. This
Well,
is Lego Pantone glue.
That actually reminds me, there must be extra pieces in there because there's no way you could make all 3 of those Iron Men
Yes. Yeah.
from the same number of pieces. You need more.
I mean,
blue
that would
for
be a great
2 of them.
accomplishment in terms of art.
That'd be an
the-
amazing design accomplishment.
Yeah.
I think the only limitation here, I mean, as somebody that really likes pop art like this, I think the only limitation that it's expensive.
It's expensive,
Um,
definitely. But the one you didn't mention so far is the vertical Vader,
That's the one I want.
which if you buy, you need 3 again, just like Iron Man. But this one is a vertical portrait of Darth Vader holding a lightsaber. And it's the one. Like when I saw that kit, I was searching the website for it because I couldn't find it immediately, and it's just beautiful. It's that pixel art aesthetic that I love. So maybe I'm a little bit partial to that, but I think
It looks like 8-bit Vader with
Yeah.
the glow of the lightsaber bouncing off of his armor. That aspect ratio is beautiful. If they release from these high-res photos, for the marketing photos, I'm sure industrious fans could reverse engineer the palette instructions, the instructions will be uploaded to some website, and there will be cheaper knockoff versions of this that people will sell for sure. I just can't justify the $400 for a piece of Lego art, even though it looks beautiful and, but that thousands of other people may potentially have in their homes. I would think it would be more worthwhile if it was something I bought at a convention from a one-off from an artist or limited edition from an artist.
Yeah. Well, I thought I was going to buy it, and then I found out about this other thing, and that's where I have to put my money.
So just announced this week, Lego has a partnership with Nintendo, and their first product they announced was not something that was definitely enticing to us, although from a technology perspective, it was interesting. It's that you build a Mario level with their own new Mario figure with animated eyes and some interactive elements in terms of sound. But what they've announced this week is something more traditional. It's more Lego sculpture, and it is a representation of the Nintendo Entertainment System. I think 1-to-1 size the NES.
I wonder.
It looks a little bit smaller in my mind, although
me too.
the NES is pretty big, right? Maybe it's NES mini size. It's like in between. It's the baby bear of NES Lego pieces. And give me 1 second.
You mean the Mama Bear?
In Mama Bear, right in the middle. But if you're watching the video, the reason I'm less excited about it, not excited about the NES itself, because it's kind of gray. It's gonna look.
it's
like
a box.
It's a box with
It's
3
really,
colors.
It's so
right?
dumb. It's so dumb.
It's like I'm not excited about that. And if you give me 1 second, I'm gonna go off camera and grab what I do have already.
Go. I personally I completely agree that it is a box, but it is a box that was there for me when I was 10 years old, and that is it. Like what happens when you're 10 stays with you forever, and so that box means a lot.
Get the actual box then. You don't need the Lego version of a box.
Well, I gotta explain why I want this, and that's first of all, we haven't even gotten to the cool.
I know. We'll talk about the cool part. So,
but go ahead.
Well, there's been fan recreations of the NES in Lego, and I have the one that I think I love the most. This is from Chris McVeigh, who actually is now partnered with Lego. He's a Lego designer, but he's releasing these portraits of pop culture characters, these kind of sketches that are now real Lego products. But he has done these miniature, like retro pieces of hardware designed in Lego, and he had one for the Nest, and this is my perfect Nest size.
Yeah, it's great.
Nest Mini size.
It does look
in
like
Lego.
Nest Mini. I build my Lego and I display them beneath my television on like the entertainment console. And so like there is no better place to put this Lego than beneath the wall hung television. It's like perfect. So I mean it's just going to blend so well and this like suit my environment perfectly. Not to mention be perfectly nostalgic for me.
I think the fact that they try to get it close to one-to-one, or it looks close to one-to-one, I think takes away from the appeal, because part of the appeal, I think, of Lego as a sculpting medium is the abstraction of like the pixelization of whatever you're trying to create, right? When the thing you're trying to replicate is itself blocky, and you're just basically stacking these bricks together, and it looks, if I look at it and I can't tell whether it's a real vintage Nest or a Lego Nest, that is not appealing to me. When people sculpt interesting things out of Lego and wear the Lego on its sleeve, that's interesting, because then they're using the medium and showing off that, oh, that's Lego, that's cool. It's not just the one-to-one recreation.
I think you're overanalyzing that a little bit. I mean, first of all, I do think it is smaller than the Nest. If you look at the photos of the guy with his hands on it, I don't think his hands are that gigantic. But I also don't think you'll have a problem differentiating between the two. And it's just cool that they like it. You could make the cartridge as well, and you put the cartridge into the unit and you push it down. It's like the only thing that clearly isn't a regular Lego thing is the cable. Like that's a little strange.
Yeah.
But let's talk about the cool animation part.
Yes. So it isn't just the console. It also comes with a beautifully designed Lego representation of a vintage television. This is like a mid-century modern CRT, right, with the big knobs and the wood tone, and it has on its screen a representation of Super Mario Brothers.
Super Mario Brothers, the original.
For the original. And not only is it just a portrait of one of the levels, they've designed it so it's actually a scrolling animation of sorts in Lego. So you have a scene that's, maybe part of a level that you actually cycle through mechanically.
So it's like they turned Lego itself into a scrolling, diorama that actually folds and rotates infinitely behind the scenes of this television, facade. It's super cool engineering, and it like that's what makes me think, it must be kind of sizable.
Yeah, and the fact that it's a CRT, so it has thickness, and so the fold, the bend can work. It's not a big circle, but it's kind of like a conveyor belt. But there's a crank on the side, and not only does the level scroll, but Mario, there is a representation of Lego Mario that moves along the level, that kind of jumps with he's attached on this rod that comes out from the side of the television.
Yeah, and he has some sort of circular disc behind him that seems to ride along some sort of rail. I can't tell exactly why he doesn't fall into the holes and how he follows the path. But then you can also, I guess if you buy that other Mario set that they put out, like Level Maker 1, you can take the Mario figure from that, which apparently has a battery in it. I had no idea. And put it on
lies.
And you put it on top of the TV, and suddenly it actually makes the sound effects that Mario should be making when he's scrolling through this level and going beneath the coins and jumping. It synchronizes the actual sound effects to the things that are happening on screen.
That's where I don't know how this works exactly, how that part works, because I understand that the Mario, the digital Mario figure,
Yeah.
has can scan barcodes or something. There's like some
RFID maybe?
recognition,
Something.
of a special brick, right? But I don't know how it can then sync with your hand cranking of the level.
There are, as far as I can tell from watching, analyzing the images and video, along this diorama, they're at the top that you can't see because it's behind the bezel of the TV. There are bricks that go right beneath where that Mario would be, and they must be the triggers.
Oh, okay, that makes sense then. So it's actually not recognizing just one brick for the entire scene. It's per frame of the scene, essentially.
Exactly.
It's recognizing it.
Well,
This is like the most Labo thing
per
they've
column.
done.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess so. Yeah, it definitely there will definitely be an element of learning how this thing works by making it.
Yeah. Yeah. The set is $230. So basically 250 if you include tax in the United States. And it goes on sale August 1st. And I kind of wish they just sold the TV. I don't need the extra bricks for the Nintendo. I don't know if I'll probably assemble it. I mean, what do we do with a pack of
I
bricks?
don't want to get confused about whether it's a real Nintendo or not.
I still
Just wait till you point your remote at that TV and be
Oh my
like, it's
God.
not turning on.
Yeah, the TV looks aesthetically just so much better to me than the NES.
Yeah.
But yeah, it'll be fun to assemble. It is kind of expensive at $230, but it's 2,600 pieces, so it's a big set. It's gonna be a lot of fun to put together. Before we continue on with the show, I want to let you know that this week's episode of This Is Only a Test is made possible with support from Keeps. Did you know that 2 out of 3 guys will experience some form of male pattern baldness by the time they're 35? The best way to prevent hair loss is to do something about it while you still have hair left. Now, thanks to Keeps, you can visit a doctor online and get hair loss medication delivered right to your home. Keeps offers generic versions of the only 2 FDA-approved hair loss products out there to deliver your medication every 3 months so you can say goodbye to pharmacy lines or awkward doctor visits. Keeps treatments can take up to 4 to 6 months to see results, so it's important that you act fast. The sooner you start using Keeps, the more hair you'll save. Keeps treatments start at just $10 a month. Plus, for a limited time, you can get your first month free. If you're ready to take action and prevent hair loss, go to keeps.com/onlyatest to receive your first month treatment for free. That's keeps.com/onlyatest. Now back to the show. I didn't get a chance to talk about Hamilton with you guys, at least the Hamill film. Have you both watched it?
Yes, we watched it as a family on, I guess it was whatever Friday or Saturday that it came out. We'd seen it, as we've talked about on the show, locally, the touring show, multiple times, and we were all curious to see what the original cast looked like because we knew the soundtrack, by heart, and so we knew those voices, and we wanted to see what they looked like. And what I thought was most interesting was that they probably recorded the soundtrack pretty early, and the Hamill film would have been very late, and so you kind of saw and heard how they evolved it over time, and made it maybe more funny to themselves and to the audience, as well as just kind of adjusting just getting super comfortable in those rhythms and the raps. Loved it.
I got called out on this for talking about it on Still Entitled, but it's cast recording, not soundtrack, is the official parlance.
Thank you.
What this is, and I want to recognize that for fans of musical theater. But you're right.
Right.
They did the cast recording very, very early on, as for typically as promotion for the live show, or a tchotchke, I think you can buy. And this was recorded in the last few weeks of the original cast's run before the actors move on. Some of the actors moved on to other projects, and they knew this was being filmed for posterity, and posterity I think is important because this wasn't something I think Lin-Manuel Miranda at the time in 2016 thought would be the way Hamilton would be released on film so soon. And yes, it's 4 years later, but I think in his head, this was something for the archives. This was going to be the document to commemorate the live performance with that original Broadway cast. And then they would have done something like a Les Mis or some type of film adaptation, which they could still do. And Disney has, could still buy the rights to do. But because of the era of the lockdown and COVID and the timeliness of Disney Plus, this became the right opportunity to put the film version out while people can't go watch the live versions.
This is the first time I actually saw it because I never saw it in person. And I respect both of you and how much people love this and the amount of creativity and the genre breaking aspect of all of this. I thought it was fine. Like um I maybe it was overhyped and maybe that's like really the thing here, and I'd heard the music before, but there are aspects of Hamilton that didn't draw me in the way that I was expecting, and like primarily it's really two things. I actually don't find the character of Hamilton that terribly interesting in the way that Lin-Manuel plays it. I don't think we see as much change in that character. And I think the place that I always struggled with it is that when he first comes in and does like I'm an incredible orator and convinces everyone that how smart he is, and starts to set up the kind of rivalry with Burr. I never bought that scene. Like I never bought like Lin Manuel's like overwhelming charisma in those lines that sets up a lot of his character throughout the rest of it. And then the other character that never did much for me was Washington in this. I know he's not like a pivotal character, but Washington never did anything for me. I love King George. Love King George.
Yeah.
Lafayette always really worked for me. Burr works for me as a character. I think you see so much emotional anguish from Burr, and like the jealousy, the kind of like up and down nature. I thought if this was really centered on Burr, this would have been a more impactful film for me.
That's interesting you say that because my sister-in-law actually has seen it. She lives in New York and saw it early, and saw it I think a couple times, and she thought this like it worked better as a story about Aaron Burr. That was what she walked away from it with.
He's the one
I
that
think
struggles, and it's the only survivor that's left with the sort of guilt and whatever you want to
he opens
attribute
and
to the ending.
closes the musical essentially, and I think Lin-Manuel has talked about Burr being the secret, like the unacknowledged main character in this one, even though it's called Hamilton. It's why that's the role that won the Tonys for the best actor. And
And then I have one other thing. I get why many of his love interest loved him. I never got Hamilton's love for his like various interests throughout the movie. Um and that broke something for me. Um so overall, it's an absolute achievement. The way they blended hip hop, the way they sort of showed the debate and argument of that time using modern techniques, it's totally genre breaking. I fully respect everything that has come out around this film. But I thought it was just I don't get I've never sort of gotten the kind of this changed musical theater for me aspect of it.
That's I love hearing your opinion, and I'm curious to hear more people's opinions who never saw it and then saw it now on Disney Plus, because I
It,
it's
it's also
obviously
yeah.
it's not going to be the same thing as seeing it in the theater where you're seeing it
Yeah.
once. This is happening in front of me, and this is the only time it will ever happen this way, and I'm seeing people make eye contact, et cetera, et cetera. But
Totally. This is a terrible way to see a musical,
yeah.
especially like having a phone, near me that I can just sort of like, go to. Like this is like the sound, everything. Like you lose a lot, by watching it on screen. But a few people have accused me of not liking musicals. I like musicals a lot.
You
But
also are not a You like some rap music? Am I right about that?
Yeah, I'm not like a hip hop maven, but like I'm not like I don't dislike the genre by any stretch. So that's not the turnoff for me at all.
Okay, yeah. For me, like it's very much like a Ready Player One thing, where I'm surprised that anybody else like that. A whole lot of people like this at all, because it for me it is a very personal thing in that I'm both. I was at one time anyway a huge fan of musical theater and rap music, and it was when I was in a freshman in high school or junior high, like I was very much into both of these worlds, and so to see finally like not only just like a rap musical, but I think a rap soundtrack that single handedly like trumps every rap album that's ever been made, like in terms of like structure and complexity. It's just like it's overwhelming in terms of the quality of that music for me, like just what it does, touching upon the things that I've been interested in. I the storyline I find it's fine. It's got war, love triangle, dueling, horrible loss and all. It's an interesting story, but for me, it's all about the music, and I'm just it's like when I watch this thing on Disney Plus or when I go to see it live, it just feels like every next song is like, oh no, this is my favorite song. No, no, I love this song. It's one after another. I just think the soundtrack's incredible.
Yeah, yeah. Have you guys watched it again since?
No, it's
No,
it's a
That's an
commitment.
interesting thing, right? Yeah, it's 2 hours 40 minutes, and it's one of those things that I don't want to burn out the live performance, because I do hope to one day be able to see it again live, and I encourage people to still seek it out to watch it live when we can go back to theaters again, and even to watch this in a theater would be the film version in a theater is something I'd be curious about, just to get the full experience of all different ways to experience these songs. But it is, I hope it's opened the eyes of a lot of people who maybe had not heard of it and enjoy it, and maybe for people who aren't big musical theater fans, to then have them seek out musical theater cast recordings and otherwise, because it's a great art form. Something also that was released on Disney Plus a couple weeks ago that I really, really want to talk about, someone talk about now, is the Frozen 2 documentary, Into the Unknown. Guys, I like this even more than the making of the Mandalorian series, which I loved.
what?
Really?
Yes.
Why is the making of Frozen that interesting? Like Mandalorian had all sorts of like film techniques and
Yeah, totally. And
like
technology and
yeah.
I was too close to the Mandalorian, right? Like Mandalorian, I felt like I wanted more from that show, even the make of the Disney Gallery making of the Mandalorian. Like the format, the Jon Favreau roundtable format, I thought was good, very evocative of his past shows, of like the Dinner for Four or Five, whatever it was, the conversation pieces with filmmakers. But the scope of Star Wars and Mandalorian specifically, I felt like there's a lot left on the table. The Frozen 2 making of documentary, which one, it's a movie that in this household we've watched dozens of times now. It's on a regular, but I like that movie more and more every time I watch it. But it specifically chronicles the final year in the making of this movie, and it is, unlike the Mandalorian, it is a chronological storytelling of over these 6 episodes of what's going on month by month as they get closer to release, as the problems of the film have not been solved yet, and they are unafraid. I mean, the movie's made $1.4 billion worldwide. It's the highest grossing animated film of all time, if you don't include the Disney Lion King live action, quote unquote, movie that Jon Favreau did. But it doesn't hold back with the troubles the filmmakers had in making this film, and the internal debate. I don't know if you guys watched it yet, but the things that were thrown out the window, the things that had to be reworked. We think of animation as, and especially computer animation, of taking a long time and things that need to get locked in, but they were writing new songs, reworking songs months before release, even after the first trailer had come out. And all that is put on display. The collaboration, how the directors and the writers work with the songwriters. The songwriters, I think, are the true stars of this story. This is Robert and Kristen Lopez, who did A Book of Mormon, who did Coco, who did the first Frozen, but they are just as much involved in the storytelling with their songwriting as the co-directors and writers are in Jennifer Lee.
I only saw the first one, the first episode, and you talking about this makes me want to go back and watch the rest of them. But one thing I did like was they did seem to be pretty, as you said, they put it out there how rough it was even into the last 6 months, before production, where they didn't have really key answers to questions that they were posing on screen yet. And they weren't happy with the structure yet. And it was interesting just to see Jennifer Lee, who isn't just the director of the film, but the chief creative officer at Disney, like
Yes.
have to go into the story trust room and receive this feedback from everybody that was really tough.
And I think we've read the Ed Catmull book about the Pixar Story Trust and how brutally honest those meetings have to be. And here they actually have the cameras in the room where you have these legends in directing, filmmakers who worked on Disney classics and modern Disney films. And it's also different because, this is Disney Animation Studios too, right? And while it's under the same umbrella as Pixar, these are completely different companies. They have pride in their work and their operating processes, which may be different than the Pixar ethos and the Pixar DNA. And they make very different films. But the burden of Frozen being such a spectacular success and cultural phenomenon, them coming out of the very first public test screening, and realizing that they didn't have a satisfying conclusion. I've come to acknowledge that the song "Show Yourself" is probably my favorite song of the film and the most emotionally resonant, because if you've seen Frozen 2, it's where Elsa finds who she is again in meeting the glacier of Aotearoa and and basically reuniting with the memory of her mother. And that revelation isn't made in the story writing process until very, very late in the process. And there's a meeting they show where the songwriters, Robert and Kristen Lopez, are in New York. They have a studio in Brooklyn, and they're writing songs. You see them, composing and riffing with each other and coming up with the lyrics and the melodies for songs like "Show Yourself." And they do their work, and then they present over a video chat with the producer and directors. And the directors had their own thoughts of like, what if we got rid of that song completely and rewrote it? And there's a scene where the directors have that idea and the songwriters had just rewritten "Show Yourself" and put all this emotion and kind of like all this of their personal life into it. And they don't know that they're about to go into this video meeting where the directors are going to pitch killing the song, just as the songwriters are going to pitch how to save the song. And there's a behind the scenes interview about this documentary process and how open access they had, where the camera people in the room are texting with each other, one in New York, one team in New York, one team in Burbank and at the Disney headquarters, and saying, this is about to go down. The director's about to pitch killing the song. Oh no, the songwriters don't know, and they're about to pitch their new version of the song, and it's raw, like the emotions, because they're hugely invested in this, right? As the creative forces of this film. And that is just, it's on film. And the fact that Disney would put it out, I think I'm sure there are things that they didn't show, in terms of the difficulties in filmmaking, but it's just a wonderful look at collaboration and the creative process.
It seems dangerously close to like inside gossip, versus like the filmmaking process. It probably teeters on that edge.
And they filmed 1,300 hours over the course of a year to make this documentary and to boil it down into 6 hours. Like that itself is a huge accomplishment. We make mini YouTube videos that kind of try to document the creative process in 15 minutes, right? And I couldn't imagine having to go through 1,300 hours of, and not knowing while in the middle of it how it's going to end up, right? The movie could have bombed, and it didn't. But it wasn't nominated for any Academy Awards either. It kind of snubbed, across all categories. But they don't go into that part of it. But yeah, just super, super interesting to watch. Highly recommended. Speaking of streaming services, Peacock launches today, guys. This is NBC's streaming service. They got the 30 Rock cast back to do a special episode just for this launch. I'm not interested. I'm sorry. There's too much right now, and things are getting, the promise of cord cutting is just paying the same amount across so many different services now, and even more so if you add in things like YouTube TV raising their prices. They had launched at $35 a couple years ago, and now they've bumped up to what is it, $65?
Yeah, it's
Crazy.
crazy. And so when it went to 35 to 50, a lot of it was like, we're adding a ton of channels. Going from 50 to 65 is like, hey, we're adding Comedy Central and VH1, and everyone is going up in this price. It's just YouTube TV is just becoming cable at this point in terms of pricing. It's the same thing. And frankly, it still has some deficiencies in terms of interface. A lot of people can't watch in 1080p on YouTube TV, which I think is a huge deficiency.
Let's get back to OTA, guys. Digital OTA, next gen TV, ATSC 3.0. You know that's the new standard is slowly being rolled out later this year. You'll need a new tuner for it, but new TVs coming out this year and later will be able to do digital broadcast in 4K 60 FPS with HDR.
What?
If you have the rights. Yeah. It's ATSC 3.0.
No kidding.
There's a new branding called Next Gen TV, which you'll see pop up on boxes. And it requires, of course, the local stations broadcast. And we had the same rollout when we moved from analog to digital OTA, with the HD transition over 10 years ago now. But this is a new standard that will allow for HDR 4K at high frame rate for sports. And it might take, it's going to be free, and you'll have ads, of course, because it'll be broadcast, but it's a way for local television stations to compete with streaming services. And it's all because of this new bandwidth, all this new spectrum that was unlocked and that the government doled out.
Cool.
But streaming services like HBO Max, they're still pushing with their big franchises. And what was announced last week was that the Matt Reeves Batman movie, still on hiatus from filming, this is the one with Robert Pattinson, will get a TV spinoff centering around the GCPD, the Gotham City Police Department. I don't know if we need new cop shows, but it is HBO, so I wonder what their take on it will be.
Yeah, I don't think it's terribly interesting to do another procedural, because we got that already. It was called Gotham. It aired on Fox for 4 or 5 seasons. The premise, if done well, and HBO would certainly earn the trust to do that, around the ramifications to a police department with Batman running around, can be interesting. But I'm not holding my breath that we need this, because we've gotten a lot of Commissioner Gordon, Bullock, all of those characters in previous iterations.
I'd be into it if it was True Detective, or Watchmen, right? In terms of tackling the issues from the civilian's perspective, the issue with policing in a world with vigilantism.
Yeah, and the Batman supposedly is going to lean much more into him as a detective. So if they lean into that detective kind of work from the police side, I think it'd be interesting. I suspect they'll default into mob kind of stuff, which has been a hallmark of that Batman work of that time, which is not well trod ground at this point.
Now, something that's going to get me subscribing back to a service, and this is CBS All Access, is Star Trek Lower Decks, the animated show. It looks so good. It's irreverent. It's about the ensigns on a post-next gen era ship. It's come out August 6th, and it has the kind of Rick and Morty feel to it, the irreverence of Rick and Morty. Not, and still, respectful of Star Trek canon, and it is canonical, but an animated, fun Star Trek for, I'm not going to say younger audiences, but for maybe a more youthful audience in terms of the tone.
Were you guys you've seen the trailer, right, Kishore?
Yeah.
Did you expect it to look like this? Because it seems much more slapsticky and goofy than I expected. It does seem like it's for kids to me.
It struck me as Family Guy more than any of the other things. It doesn't like we didn't get a lot of the kind of brilliance of Rick and Morty coming through in this trailer. I mean, the trailer's too short to show that. I think the needle they have to thread here with this kind of environment, I'm fine with the more comedic take. I think that that can be a lot of fun. I think they have to thread this needle of like, we have to care about these characters. And the trailer doesn't make me care about any of them. They're just
That's
the
going to take
butt of the
time.
joke. I know it takes time, but right now they're just the butt of the joke. Like they're getting holodeck, waste, spilled on them and stuff. And you're like, ah, ha, ha. So I think if they can thread that line where it's still funny and we care about them, then this can be really consistent with Star Trek.
I guess
I didn't see it from the trailer though.
to me, the thing that caught me was the senior staff all seemed like caricatures that didn't seem anything like the senior
Right.
staff that we know from any of the series. So maybe that's supposed to just speak to the what it would be like to be on the lower decks and not have the perspective of the director and the camera people when they're shooting Star Trek, but more of like, oh, look at these high and mighty officials who think they're
Oh,
so great.
the captain's going on an away mission again. Why would the captain go on an away mission? Like that kind of thing. There's enough farce in the storytelling of Star Trek and the high conceptness of the alien of the week that they could tap into that and poke fun of that while still being true to the series.
Yeah. Oh, I'll watch it. Curious.
Well, something I think you'll probably read is Ready Player 2, Jeremy. This is a little bit of a shock. The
What's that?
announcement.
What is this? Is this a
It doesn't exist.
what?
No,
No,
you deny it.
no. I'm absolutely excited about it. I was so, it was so sad that when the day that this news dropped, the sequel to Ready Player One, the book, is coming out this, what is it, October, November?
November 24th.
And, news hit, and my Twitter feed just got all down on it. Like, apparently I'm one of the only fans in my timeline of Ready Player One. So, hey, I feel bad, that you guys can't enjoy a little fun novel here about the future in VR. But I got nothing but pure excitement about this. I can't wait to see where this story goes. I understand that Ernie Klein struggled in making it a sequel to the book after having, co-written and worked on the movie. He wanted to sort of separate those two in his mind, and that's part of what took so long. So we are going to see a sequel to the actual story of the book. So
I
that's
think
great.
people's perceptions are clouded by the movie experience
Yeah.
around the book. And also, like, let's acknowledge what Ready Player One was. It's a very popcorn kind of book. It's not this like deep, incisive commentary on culture of this time. It was just like an enjoyable kind of dive into nostalgia.
And it was
And
written at a time where that wasn't as celebrated as widely in
right.
No, or
So I think
VR. It was written before the Oculus was even on Kickstarter. It was
yeah.
totally. And so I think he has more work to do this time around to kind of capture a little bit of that magic again. Now, it can't be the same kind of version of that magic. Otherwise, it's just going to feel like a retread instead of a worthy sequel.
yeah.
But I think he's earned like the trust to try it. I thoroughly enjoyed that first book for what it was.
I did too, and I don't think I ever actually read it. I listened to it several times, and I think it's Will Wheaton's best work. Honestly, like I think even more than Star Trek or his blogging or Stand By Me, it is like his reading of Ready Player One is phenomenal, and so I hope he's back for the sequel. And I wasn't a fan of Armada, Ernie Klein's second book, not that much. My son liked it, but I didn't get into it, and so there is that. Like, there's that. Well, okay, maybe I wonder if he is. I wonder if he only has one good book in him. I wonder that. So that there is like I'm curious to read it. I'm cautiously optimistic, but I love the first one so much. I'm there.
And I think he has to be cognizant of where the world is today in its relationship with pop culture and virtual reality technology. I hope that's all taken into account, and so that he can have new ideas that for people like us who will kind of live partially in that world already can still feel surprised. Next week is when Comic-Con would have been taking place, and there's going to be Comic-Con at home, online panels, free for people to watch, of course, as well as a bunch of retailers launching their exclusives. So if you follow toy makers and artists, they're doing a lot of these drops, limited edition drops, and it'll be a test to see whether that marketplace online can sustain it, and people will buy these things. And I'm sure it will. Hasbro, for example, is doing a big kind of a crowdfunding campaign, which has been widely successful, for a 27-inch Sentinel figure from the X-Men world. And I think over 9,000 people have backed that one already, which is insane when they couldn't get
Wow.
2,000, 3,000 people to back their Cookie Monster Hasbro Pulse campaign. So I'm a little
I'm excited about this. If you haven't gone to a virtual con yet, I highly recommend it. It basically is the same experience in terms of the panels, minus waiting in line for hours and hours and hours. And so it's lacking like a little bit of the kind of punch of Hall H, but I've never gone to Hall H. It was too much. But those side panels that were also really hard to get into, now everyone can go. And I honestly think this is going to be a future of a lot of cons to a certain extent. There's no replacing the in-person cosplay. There's no replacing like talking to the vendors in the alley. There's no replacing the energy of the crowd. But I do think the panels can totally function virtually in a very smart and interesting way. I have like 6 on my schedule next week that I'm going to try to check out.
And a lot of people went to those conventions to see the actors that they love interact with each other in a very familial setting, which like Josh Gad, who's done his kind of Reunited Apart series, has done. Like those are essentially the feeling that I would hope people would get from these Comic-Con panels.
Cons are selling like exclusive like one-on-one video chats for a minute with the actors in lieu of autographs. And it's the same in a lot of ways. It's a very similar experience, minus the awkward hug.
All right, let's move on. No tech news? All right, let's move on. There's really not a lot to talk about. We missed Microsoft shutting down all of its Windows stores. It was expensive. This kind of goes in line following up their shutting down of Mixer, which is both of those are really unfortunate. I know a lot of people had looked to Microsoft stores as places to gather and meet friends, and they'd done a lot of esports events there. It was kind of a place for kids after school to go play on a computer and learn computers and play Minecraft. But it's expensive retail space, and with stores not in-person shopping not really rebooting soon, it just didn't make sense for them to continue. So RIP Microsoft stores. But Stadia, Google Stadia, still going. Almost a year into it now, I guess. They had their Stadia Connect announcement show a few days ago, and they announced a few exclusives, including with Harmonix and Rock Band, but also with Bomberman. So this is something that hopefully takes advantage of the fact that you can easily play a Stadia game without having to install anything, play it in a browser. But 64-player Bomberman will be exclusive to Stadia for Stadia Pro users. Not interested, guys? No?
I'm still not convinced. Whoa! I'm getting feedback.
There, guys. Sorry.
I'm still not convinced about Stadia overall being like a platform that I'm gonna prefer gaming on versus like a PS5 or just on PC.
Agreed.
Yeah. Speaking of PS5 and technologies associated with it, Unreal's been dropping a lot of new tech demos that they're working on for Unreal 5, and one of those is facial performance capture with the iPhone, with the iPhone's AR kit camera.
Genius.
It makes a lot of sense. You get a lot of data from that without having to put tracking markers. You get skeletal modeling, and if the engine can adapt that for rigging in characters that you design in Unreal, then it's a low-cost way to at least get your base level animation in, and then you can tweak that. But it's another step in turning this powerful $1,000 computer that most people have into a tool for production and development.
Yeah, I think Will was working on the same kind of technology long before Unreal.
Yeah. Definitely people working in kind of entry-level, low-cost performance and mocap. It's going to be, I think, great for them. Anything else in the world of tech you guys want to talk about? There's no big console news yet. So I think we're going to hold off until we hear more about PS5 and Xbox. But let's move on to which version of the song do I use? Let's go with this
The
one.
good version. Now it's time for a moment of science.
Is that what you consider the good version, Kishore?
Yes, that's
Okay.
the version.
That's
I'll be back with my series "Living with COVID" shortly with some pre-recorded interviews starting next week again. But I wanted to give a couple updates on COVID. One is that there was a recent study that came out on patients in Italy. It looked at 143 patients who had been hospitalized in Rome and tracked their symptoms over a longer period of time. So in context, like at this point, over the millions of cases worldwide, we know about 80% of the people that get this tend to have what are either called asymptomatic or mild cases where there's recovery in about 2 weeks. The other 20% go through, extensive situations where it takes 3 to 6 weeks to recover, and that includes like hospitalizations and other things. There's an emerging set of people that are called long haulers that have persistent symptoms over a long period of time. And this study out of Italy was the first one to start tracking what those symptoms really look like over a period of a few months. Because really, still, the disease has only been around less than, only about 6, 7 months in total. So we're still getting pictures of what this is. And what they found is out of those 143 patients that they tracked, um, and these are again for reference, people that got sick. They spent on average 13 days in the hospital. 20% of them needed to be put on breathing assistance of some kind. 2 months later, only 13% of the patients are symptom free. Most at least experience one symptom or another, whether it's fatigue or coughing, which are the two most common ones. But this kind of indicates that the people that are getting sick, the people in that 20%, there's a class of those people that are going to be dealing with the ramifications of the disease for a long period of time. And how long is what we don't know. And it seems like the stratification by age is not consistent with the stratification based on death. So right now we know people that are older, people that have other underlying conditions are more likely to die from COVID. But what we're seeing with these persistent symptoms is it's across age ranges, and there's no sort of rhyme or reason about it. And this is one of the big science questions that remains out there: is why do some people get really sick and others don't? And we just don't know why. So while we've gotten a lot better of treating COVID in the hospital, the mortality rate is slowly improving over time. Um, as better treatment methods, and like some of the better treatment methods are really simple, like having people lay on their front, and because it helps with their breathing. This sort of persistent symptom is something to track, and we're only going to learn about over the next like 6 to 12 months. So I just want to remind people, as we're talking about stuff like sports coming back, like the risk that people are taking isn't just about death and near-term illness. It's about potential long-term consequences as well. Um, Second, I want to reiterate something that has sort of caught my eye. Like I noticed there's a lot of mass shaming on social media and just generally sharing of people behaving badly in terms of how they're taking precautions in their own life. I just want to reiterate some common things we know from social science that work and don't work. So one, shaming people typically doesn't change their behavior on stuff like wearing a mask. So if you're doing it or sharing videos of people sort of not complying with public health guidance, it tends to actually be counterproductive. And just put yourself in that situation. If you were doing something bad and then constantly being called out about it on social media and other places, they make you more likely and more empathetic to actually take that behavior change. You can kind of understand why that kind of backfires on us. The second thing is if you're trying to actually convince people to wear masks or do other things, what's most important is just to model the good behavior. Just show yourself wearing a mask, make it normal. Uh, Show yourself distancing. Don't make a big deal out of it. Don't make it like the life or death situation while we know it to be. Don't make it the be all end all. Just make it the background in everyday life. We don't question people wearing shirts into establishments because it's just the norm at this point to do that. So we need to do that with other behavior like wearing masks. Appeal to empathy in terms of understanding where people are coming from around this. Acknowledge their concerns, like masks suck. Like I mean, I have no other way to put it. Like masks are uncomfortable. They're itchy. They fog up my glasses. All of those things are true for people and reasons why they don't wear it. Acknowledge those real concerns, and then finally be nice. Like I don't know where we lost a sense of kindness around this. And social media isn't a great place for any of these things, but those are the things that we know work. And so I haven't always been great about following those guidelines myself. But that's what I'm committed to. And that's what we all need to be committed to, because unless we all become science communicators modeling that good behavior, we're not going to see the kind of change we need in this country to really squash this disease. And it's really possible. There's been emerging studies that say, like, if we had 100% mask wearing, the virus would potentially go away in 4 to 6 weeks. Now, that's not realistic for a lot of reasons. But if we got to 91 to 95% mask wearing, we'd see a dramatic reduction in cases in this country, to the point where we would be able to revisit things like live sports and businesses being open and just taking a walk down the street without a mask on our face. Um, Lastly, I have a weird story. Nathan's hot dog eating contest was on July 4th every year. And this year, Joey Chestnut set another world record, eating 75 hot dogs. And there's a paper that came out. I don't remember what journal this was. They probably don't even want me to name the journal at this point. That modeled what the human limits on eating hot dogs in 10 minutes could be. So a researcher, sorry, I have to look up his name. I believe it's Brian Smoliga from High Point University. He's a physiologist there. Used a mathematical model from Stanford that was used to model how fast dogs can run. Like, what's their limit on maximum speed? And then took in historical data from the Nathan's hot dog eating contest to actually map where we'll start to see leveling off in terms of record breaking on hot dog eating. Because just like, a 100-meter sprint, there's going to be a leveling off where we don't see as much dramatic increase. And so you can model that mathematically and slowly find where that limit is. What do you think that limit is?
Oh my God.
This year, the record was 75. So how much farther can we go in 10 minutes?
I'm really afraid. I'm afraid to say 100.
You can't. I don't even believe 75.
Well, it's on video. Like, it happened. Like,
in a bun?
Yeah, eat the bun too. So what they do is they eat the hot dogs separately and then dunk the buns in water to make it go down faster.
A deconstructed
this is horrible.
Hot dog.
This is horrible.
Okay.
I'm going to say 100.
The answer according to the paper is only 83. We're quickly
that doesn't make
approaching
it
the
any
limit.
better.
I'm literally tearing up over here. This is
science answering the important questions.
That should not be an aspirational goal for Joey Chestnut. Please do not try to get 84.
Close.
That's not helpful. Close is oh my God, close to losing it. Oh, wow. Thank you for the update, Kishore. That study about the 2-month study you said, right, with the long-term effects. I mean, we've seen so many people who got it and recovered and have posted about their lingering effects, and that's really so scary, especially for young folks who think they're just immune from any of the effects of it. It's just not true. 90% almost.
it's not just scary, it's also like the long-term ramifications of this, like it, because we talk about like squashing the virus and getting past this moment. We're going to have to live with it for a long period of time, even after we come up with treatments that allow us to move past it. And really, I think like we can't leave those people behind. Right now we need to understand what that is, and support them, because they we're in this together.
And I just want to put a period on this discussion, because I know a lot of people are probably thinking the same thing. Because sure, I completely agree with you about empathy and relying on that, and considering how other people really, like, realizing that other people are people too and have feelings and are doing their best. But most of the frustration that I've seen is not with regular people; it's with municipalities and administrations who are themselves ignoring guidance, health guidance, and pushing to reopen schools this fall too early, opening entire cities, doing things that are completely the wrong thing to do, the wrong direction in order to get our numbers down. And that it's hard to be empathetic towards people who are making decisions for the wrong reasons.
So really quickly, I'll respond to that. I agree. I think we need to hold our government officials accountable, to following the best guidance possible in making their decisions. And it's our voice as the people, especially in this country, that makes a difference, especially when we vote, in terms of holding them accountable to following that advice. So I agree with you 100% there. Also, there's not going to be science-based answers to all of these questions. There's not a science-based answer to when should we open schools safely. Like, we're all just trying to manage a little bit of risk, and science is an answer, but schools play a huge role in society, well beyond like learning for students. They're social hubs. They're important places for mental health. They allow parents to potentially go back to work. They're part of our economy, and the level of complication that comes with that is enormous. And so, all science can really help us with is mitigating the potential risk of transmission. But that's not the only thing we need to take into account when we're in the middle of that conversation. So I do reject like the binaries that are forming around like science says we should open schools or not. It's never going to be that way. It's never going to be that way about any big choices that we have in society going forward. Frankly, it was never that way before this virus either. So I do have a lot of empathy around those decisions, because people are coming from a lot of different places of need around those big social structures opening. And I know of many families, within my own school, that really their kids need the school, need the physical place, and they're going through a lot of pain and hurt. And I'm trying to really be open to hearing those perspectives and assuming good intent, except from the really terrible actors that are intentionally, not playing a role in that discussion. Sorry, that was not a short answer to that question.
Yeah, gotta adjust that dimmer switch. All right, let's move on to our final segment.
The VR Minute. Virtual reality this week.
The final hours of Half-Life Alyx was released last weekend. This
Oh,
past weekend.
you're reporting on this? Did you read it?
I read it.
Did
I
you?
read the whole thing.
Wow.
I enjoyed the spit out of it. And I wish, or I could have talked about it in a pop culture segment, because I think if I have a recommendation, it is to watch it doesn't matter which order, read the final hours of Half-Life Alyx and then watch the Frozen 2 documentary. I think they make for great companion pieces. They are both these unfettered deep dives into stressful creative collaborations and the hard choices that these smart people have to make. I don't want to spoil the story too much, and it's an interactive experience, but it is basically a long essay that you can buy on Steam. It's interactive, and there are some wonderful game models that you can interact with, and even things like playing with the sounds of head crabs. It's really, really cool presentation, but the documentation of what Valve did in the 4 years of making, and even the last 10 years of all the projects they started and stopped in VR and otherwise to get to Half-Life Alyx is something that we never thought we'd be able to see transparency into. Just some highlights: they do allude to projects that were called Half-Life 3 that people worked on for a year or two in VR and not in VR. The three projects, full VR games that Gabe had talked about, that we had talked about on the podcast, those are named out, and only one of those made it, which is Half-Life Alyx. The other two, one was like a Minecraft-like game, I believe, a construction game, and one was called Sim Trek, that they didn't really go into details about. But it was interesting to learn that, for example, the story beats that I love so much in Half-Life Alyx really didn't come into existence until less than a year away from, and in the final year, when they brought in Sean Vanneman and Jade Rodkin from Campo Santo into the writing team to rework the story, because they had a big play test with the internal play test and it wasn't resonating.
Wow.
So things like the ending of the game and the G-Man is always going to be part of the ending, but the way in which it tied back to episode 2, that was all new. The kind of red herring with who was in the box, that was all in the vault, that was all very, very late. And they were able to kind of re-navigate, even bring characters like Russell and having Alex being voiced. Those are very late decisions. Really, really interesting.
Wow. Why do you think it wasn't a video? Because when I heard, even up until it was released, I assumed it was going to be a video, because maybe I just don't follow this closely enough. Do you think that that Jeff chose to make it an essay just purely for budget reasons?
I think Jeff's a writer, and I
Yeah.
think the amount of access he had, it sounds like he had so much access to be embedded there over that period, but not necessarily with the video production team, and mostly with audio recording and photography. And while he shot video pieces to help announce the game, maybe there is additional video content, but I think the narrative, and I think what he really excels at is that storytelling. Allows him to go jump forward, backward in time to some of the devs before they worked at Valve and their journeys getting there. And I found that stuff really cool too. So highly recommended if you have interest in how Valve works or the making of Alyx, and some clues as to what they want to work on in VR and not in VR going forward. Couple other things in the world of quest and side quests. We have now a big leap. We have Return to Castle Wolfenstein. What is this? id Tech
3
being ported over to Quest and apparently running pretty well.
Yeah, I mean it's not out yet, but they announced it. What is his name? Dr. Beef, the same person who ported Quake and Doom and Half-Life so far. He's now working now on this on Return to Castle Wolfenstein, and they released 10 minutes of footage, and it looks great. Apparently, it's got full-fledged 6-DoF hand and head movement now, and even since that video was released, he's added actual grenade throwing so that you can lob grenades correctly. Who knows how much longer it will be until it's out? I imagine it a matter of weeks. But his stuff is always extremely high quality, and it's amazing that in some cases it's the only place you can play these games in VR is native on Quest. These almost always, you would assume, would start on PC, but
yeah,
it's super cool that he does this work. We all love it.
Yeah, and no easy port, not just from an engine perspective, but also from an interaction perspective, and getting all the hands and the weapons to work properly.
I don't remember this game very well. Do you?
Yeah. Oh yeah. This was the big return. It was the big return to Wolfenstein, but it was the big 3D version of Wolfenstein. It was beloved. Had a great flamethrower effect, amazing flamethrower effect.
I must have played it. I just don't remember it very well.
It was during your dark times away from PC gaming.
Yeah, maybe it was 2001.
Something like that. Yeah, right at tail end, I guess, of your tenure gamer. The makers of Superhot have put out the next expansion, I guess, standalone expansion called Mind Control Delete. It's for people who back the game and who own the game. It's free, but it's going to be apparently their last VR effort for a while. They're going to move on to non-VR games as their next thing, but it's out when you listen to this, July 16th, and it looks like cool. Looks like
Wait.
Superhot.
Wait a minute, dude. Are you reporting accurately? I thought this was not in VR. I thought this was strictly flat screen Superhot.
Is this strictly flat screen? Maybe this is.
Yeah, I thought it was flat screen as well. And you're talking about the mind control delete thing, right?
Is it only flat screen?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay. So that's where I have the misunderstanding. This is only flat screen, and I guess that's what the team wants to work on, probably because they can make more money on that than a VR version. But it's got to be ported to VR.
Hope so.
At some point. Yeah. I know it wasn't cheap for them to do the first game for Quest, but hopefully they've seen enough success for that on Quest to make it worth their while. It's definitely been worth the while of Guy, who works on Virtual Desktop to develop for Quest, and he's sold a bunch of it. He's had a lot of success. Congratulations. It's because it's a great program.
$3 million in revenue on Oculus Quest alone.
Wow.
And apparently, like, that is where all of his user base is now. Like, all of the feedback, all the support, all of the feature requests he's getting, it's like 99% Quest. So that's where his time is dedicated now. He says he has a few more features in mind for the PC version, but it makes sense. The Quest version, you're not tethered to your PC. So the fact that you can be anywhere and just over Wi-Fi connect to your PC makes it so much more realistic. If you're at your PC, there's a good chance you'll just take your headset off and use it. But if you're on your Quest, you can't necessarily do that. And it allows you to play full-fledged PC games on a Quest, which
PC VR games,
which that tech alone is pure magic. The fact that the latency is low enough. Props. I mean, absolute mad respect to this guy. We met him briefly at
Oculus Connect, 2 years ago. I mean, short of Oculus putting out their own solution for tetherless PC streaming, this is going to be the best way, and that's great. Good on him to explore that before there's any official support for it. Even though you can't do native virtual desktop on the Quest. Yeah, you can only do it on the Rift to have the hub. So. Excellent. There's some good demo videos of a VR air guitar game that look really cool using the finger tracking. We're seeing a lot of more finger tracking demos. I know the Waltz of the Wizard folks, they've been upgrading that on a regular basis with crazy force powers that you can do. And I got to try this air guitar thing because I'm skeptical about the tracking fidelity, that the latency and also just the occlusion of fingers will work for air guitaring and make it feel like how awesome you feel in your head when you do air guitar.
I missed this. This looks like a well done game. This is on SideQuest?
I don't think it's out yet. You
Okay.
just put the gameplay video. It's still in development.
Okay.
Early access, I think, soon. And then finally, Tender Claws, the folks who did Under Presents, have their new immersive theater experience. It is a ticketed purchase for $15. You get to watch a specially curated and designed performance of Shakespeare's Tempest, The Tempest, in the world of the Under Presents with all their aesthetic and their interaction. And it's not a straightforward play. I got to do this a few weeks ago and chatted with the Tender Claws folks about it, and I recommend it. I think it's one of those unique VR experiences that give me a taste of what VR could do for live performance.
So I assumed it was going to be a theater in the round, and it would be on a stage, and apparently it's not. How is that handled? Like, how does the player's camera, how does the player himself or herself move around the world?
It's the same way you would in I described it more of a guided tour than it is going to
a
small theater. So there is no stage. You are in the environments and you get teleported, and it's one performer, like we did with the Venture Lab, who has to take on all the roles, but also has controls to not only puppet their character but also teleport all the up to 8 people who joined in for that session into the environments and then show you the world and also interact with you. So they talk to you, they give you roles to play, and
you talk as well.
You don't speak, you just gesture, but you play along. And so it's very much that kind of like you're on a tour and the tour guide asks you to participate, and then you get to actively, partake in some part of the performance.
That sounds cool. 40-minute experience.
About 45 minutes. Yeah. Yeah. With a little bit of onboarding. And for $15, I think really worth it just to try. I'm like the whole time I'm worried about my internet connection and not dropping out. It's on the Quest. You got to make sure your headset's fully charged. But once I got through it all, it was like a really memorable thing.
It's interesting that if you were to charge $15 for a 40-minute single player game, people would laugh at you. But as
Right.
soon as you throw, some sort of live element in the mix where there's somebody actually interacting with you personally, it becomes a completely different experience.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And from what I've heard, they've had live performers do these sets in the kind of multiplayer area of the Underpresents for a long time, and there's a growing community of fans who go just for that. They maybe beat the game already, the time boat element of it, and they go just to watch these improv actors, these theater actors, about a dozen of them, do their pop in and interact and do their pieces, and they're fans of these actors now and want to support them or watch them, play a different role. And in this case, it's the roles in The Tempest. And that does it for this week's episode. I know we tried to keep it tight and we got a little bit over, but we had a lot of news to cover. We'll be coming back next week and trying to keep things tight as well. And we're going to try to throw in a few more interview segments. And so I'll be reaching out to folks and chatting with them across pop culture, tech, VR, and all the other things that we cover. But it's good to see you guys. And thank you out there for listening and subscribing and creating intros for those of you who have done so. We have a backlog of a few to play still, but please keep on sending me 15-second or shorter intros, and we'll play them until we find one that we really love. And outros as well. You can always go to Tested and find the SoundCloud file to create a new outro. And this week's outro comes courtesy of Black Powder Engine. And here goes.
Hi there, I didn't see you.
Tested.
But when someone falls into the lava, that person is never seen again. They're gone.
In real life, if you fall into lava, you're just gonna burn on the top. So that people are just like laying on the surface, writhing and flailing around. Ah, it burns, it burns.
Yeah. Can we talk about squadrons now?
Soon enough, Jeremy. Soon enough. We'll be talking about squadrons.
Not soon enough.
Not soon enough. October 2nd, everyone. All right. We'll see you next week. Bye.